couple days ago, I was talking to my girlfriend and I recognized a logical fallacy in the American psyche, which is this idea that Europeans are living a materially inferior life. Now, while it is true that Europeans generally don't value materialism nearly as much and so don't invest into material items nearly as much as Americans do, what I realized was that the Americans who have the means to be materialistic, or even those who don't have the means and live well above their means to keep up with the Joneses, generally signify the fact that they're well off, or the perception that they're well off, by getting European things. That's how Americans signify their wealth. That's how they acquire status, is by going out and buying the Louis Vuitton or the Gucci. Those are European brands. They go out and buy a Mercedes-Benz or a BMW. Again, European brands. Those who can really afford it, they get the Lamborghinis and the Ferraris, the Rolls Royces. All European brands. And what really strikes me as interesting is not just the fact that Americans are getting European items to signify their wealth, it's the fact that it doesn't go both ways. You see, I lived in Europe for 14 months. I lived in the Netherlands, and what I realized was that Europeans are generally not consuming American products. The only exception to this that I observed was movies and TV shows, things like that, media. But in terms of physical, tangible products that have to be exported, you don't really see a whole lot of Europeans consuming American products. And I believe this is because Europeans recognize quality because they grow up around it. And so when they come across American products which have inferior quality, they know not to waste their money on them. Bearing that in mind, in this video, I'm going to be reacting to a video about why US products struggle in Europe by traveling expats. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this video.
Tariffs are on. Wait a minute. Tariffs are off. Well, tariffs are on again. We're going to put a pause on tariffs so we can communicate. Oh, communications aren't going well. We're going to put the highest tariffs ever on. It goes back and forth. Are you pretty exhausted about all this tariff talk? Yeah, I am too, for sure. And I tell you, I wonder if there's, sometimes I wonder, is there really any logic or thought to this, or is it just like whatever we feel like from day to day? But anyway, so I'm Lee, Betty's behind the camera, and we are here on an absolutely beautiful day in Seattle, Washington. We're going to show you some images of the city. We've got the beautiful Olympic Mountains behind me in the Puget Sound, so it's absolutely gorgeous. But yeah, something that, as an American from the United States who lives in Germany, and we hear about this tariff talk, some things that I've been thinking about recently are, what's the purpose of it? So it seems to be like there's a belief, amongst our president and a lot of people who live in the United States, they seem to think that.
So before we even go any further, I just want to preface the rest of this video by saying I'm not very well informed on the whole tariff talk situation. I don't really know what's going on with the tariffs. I don't think tariffs will really make that big of a difference in terms of European consumerism, simply because, again, Europeans tend to prefer European products or even Asian products. But let's say cars, for example. I didn't really see a whole lot of Europeans driving American brand cars. And if they did, they were variants of American brand cars that are only sold overseas. So you might have Ford cars, but they're Ford cars that aren't even sold in America. They're only sold in Europe and maybe Asia and Australia. I don't know because I haven't been to Australia. But again, I don't think it'll really make that big of a difference. But hey, I don't know what's going on either way. So I guess we'll find out by the end of this video.
Germans or Europeans in general don't buy products from the United States. And I don't know where that thought comes from, because where the way I see it, I mean, Europeans in general, Germans buy a lot of products from the United States, especially technological products and the service industry. I mean, you look, a lot of people have iPhones, a lot of people have Apple products.
He got me there. he did get me there. They do tend to use a lot of iPhones, but I don't know that iPhones are as common in the EU because people there seem to prefer using WhatsApp. I don't know if that's just a force of habit, but to my knowledge, iMessage works very similarly to WhatsApp in that you don't even need to actually have minutes, or you don't need to use your minutes to use iMessage, just like you don't need to use your minutes to use WhatsApp. So that was kind of the conclusion that I came to, but maybe my assumption was wrong. He could very well disprove everything I just said up to this point by the end of this video.
A lot of people wear American clothing. You see Levi's all over the place. Food and drink, American fast food is everywhere. So they do use a lot of American products, but it seems to be time and time again, the big concern is why don't Europeans drive American-made cars? Why don't they drive cars that come from the United States? And I guess the blame is on tariffs. So we're going to jack up the tariffs on European products because, people in the U.S. love to drive foreign cars. We drive a lot of cars from Japan. We love cars from Germany. So why don't Europeans feel the same about our cars? And anyone who asks that question, I have to wonder, have you ever been to Europe? Have you ever been to Germany? And if you have you ever driven over there? And if you have, then you'd probably realize why they don't drive a lot of US made cars, because they're just not practical for the roads for a few reasons. Number one, for the most part, US cars are too big. A lot of European roads are designed around medieval cities, and sure, the highways are plenty big, but the small roads in the towns and villages just aren't big enough to accommodate huge Suburbans or Tahoes or whatever the case may be. So the vehicles just are not practical in Europe.
And to add to the fact that the vehicles are big, they're also heavy. So I don't know about the rest of the EU or any other country in Europe, but I do know in the Netherlands, you have to pay a vehicle tax, I think annually, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, according to the weight of your car. So it behooves most people at least most people who care about their finances, to get the lightest car that they possibly can that's still functional and practical for their everyday needs. Which, for the vast majority of people, they don't need a Ford F-150 or a Chevy Suburban or a Cadillac Escalade. Those are cars that you will rarely, if ever, see in the Netherlands. I don't think I ever saw any of those particular cars out there because, again, they're just completely impractical. Instead, people will drive those little red cars that go up to, I think, 40 kilometers an hour or something like that. But it's definitely very, very impractical to drive a big car like that in Europe, in most of Europe.
And parking can also be very tight. I mean, if you've got a big, American truck, you're going to have a hard time finding parking in many European cities, towns, and villages. It's not going to be easy. And then you've got the fuel cost. Fuel is a lot more expensive in Europe than it is in the United States. And
so wait. This is kind of interesting because it says 173 euros per liter. When I first went to Spain, for whatever reason, I didn't make the connection that they were charging on a per liter basis. I went out there thinking they were charging per gallon. And I remember telling my girlfriend, I was like, wow, gas out here is so cheap. That's crazy. But then I realized that it was actually per liter and it's much more expensive. As a matter of fact, let me do the calculations right now. So that's in Germany. Let me know how much gas is per liter in your European country. But 173 per liter times, I think it's 3.8 liters per gallon. That is 6.57 per gallon. That is astronomically high. That's the type of gas price you're going to pay in literally the most touristy areas in LA, San Francisco, and New York. Everywhere else, it's going to be closer to probably $3 a gallon on average. I haven't been back to the US in almost a month, so I don't know what it is now, and I know it kind of tends to fluctuate, but probably around 3 is the average for the whole US. So yeah, There's a big reason why people in Europe tend to get those smaller, more fuel efficient cars, and why they tend to opt for manual transmissions is because they're not trying to pay that. They are not trying to pay that, and rightfully so.
Fuel is a lot more expensive in Europe than it is in the United States. And I hear a lot of Americans complain about the price of gas, but it's nothing in the United States compared to what it is in Europe. So, and American cars just tend to.
So my calculation was off by about $1. So you're looking at $7.66 per gallon. I don't think I've ever seen that price in the US before, ever. That's pretty wild.
To use a lot of fuel compared to American and Asian cars. Now, Europeans will buy foreign cars because if you look at the car market in the European Union, about 25% of the new cars sold in Europe right now are Asian brands. They either come from Japan or South Korea, for the most part, and also they are buying more Chinese cars now too. And
those Chinese electric cars, they are coming in hot. They are coming in very, very hot. So it's nice to see that companies like Tesla have some actual competition now. Because I'm not going to lie, with the way Elon Musk has been moving over the past few years or whatever, I don't know that I really want to spend my money on a Tesla. So I'll have to keep an eye out on some of the newer Chinese electric car manufacturers.
And if you look even more closely at that, so about 25% are brands from Asia, but and then I think about 13% of the cars sold in Europe are actually produced in Asia and shipped to Europe. So they will buy foreign cars. But if you look at the Asian cars, they identify the market in Europe and they adapt their product to the market. I think Japanese cars are great at that, and even the South Korean cars, because you'll see Japanese cars in the United States, you'll see Toyotas in the United States that you'll never see in Europe, because they develop big cars for the American market because they know people in the U.S. want big cars. So Toyota makes big cars. They make, the Toyota Tundra pickup trucks. They make Land Cruisers and things like that for the American market that they don't sell in Europe because Europeans don't want them. So if Asian, car manufacturers can do that, why can't American cars? And when we talk about the practicality of autos, from my experience from living in Germany, Germans are very practical people, right? They want to spend their money on something that they need and they're going to get use out of. So for the few people in Germany that, say, for example, need...
It's interesting he says Germans are known for being practical. I'm not trying to start a country war in the comments, but let me know, if you're European, who you think is more practical, just in general. We're going to generalize here, but who do you think is more practical between the Dutch and the Germans? Because the Dutch are also known for being very, very practical people, and they are amongst the most practical people that I've personally ever come across in my life. So let me know who you think is the most practical, or if you think your country's people are the most practical.
A pickup truck, more often than not, it's going to be an American brand. You'll see quite a few Ford F-150s, you see some Ford Rangers, and you see some Ram pickup trucks. You don't see very many Chevrolets. I'm not sure why that is. But whenever you see a pickup truck, more often than not, it is an American brand, even though Volkswagen and Mercedes actually make pickup trucks. But I would say you see more American brand trucks in Europe
I didn't even know that.
than you do German brands. And so they will buy American products if it's something they need, but they're just not going to buy big Yukons or Suburbans because they just don't need them. They're not practical. They use too much gas and they don't fit on their roads. And the other product, switching gears a little bit, that I hear a lot of talk about is, the President Trump wants Europeans and he wants the EU to buy more food from the United States. And I would say a big reason why a lot of food from the United States isn't sold in Europe is because it breaks EU laws. The European Union has very strict laws on food safety, the ingredients in foods, and they just simply don't think a lot of American products are safe, to be honest. So, I know there are products, I think
They don't think they're safe, or they know they're not safe. Actually, this is interesting. I don't even know which products are banned, so let's look at this
Mountain
list.
Dew, for instance, isn't sold in Germany, and some other things. A lot of color.
Wait, Skittles? I could have sworn I saw Skittles when I was in Europe. They don't have Skittles at Albert Heijn? I'm almost positive that I saw Skittles while I was in the Netherlands. All the other stuff, Mountain Dew, I know I didn't see that. Cereals, I know that's a big one because the cereal section in any Dutch grocery store I ever went to was much, much smaller. Boxed mac and cheese, yeah, I never saw that either. In fact, I actually put my girlfriend on to mac and cheese. We had mac and cheese, well, she had mac and cheese for the first time sometime earlier this year, I believe. And she cooked it, and it came out very nice, but it was not the boxed mac and cheese. She made it from scratch. So shout out to her. Gatorade, yeah, I know they don't have that. So that's interesting. Ritz crackers. I wonder what's so bad about those in particular. I like crackers a lot, but yeah, a lot of this stuff, I'm not gonna lie, I don't even eat. I don't eat myself because Mountain Dew, there's no reason you should be consuming something like that, even on occasion.
Rings we use. So,
And you know
again,
what? Unrelated side note, but I had a teacher in 4th grade, Miss Rucker. I'm going to call her out. She used to pull up to class, obviously not with a kettle, but she used to pull up with a big bottle about this big right here, full of Mountain Dew. Full of Mountain Dew, and she would drink that every single day. I hope she's doing all right, because I have to imagine that over the years, that had an adverse effect on her health. So, hey, shout out to Miss Rucker.
and if we want to sell our food products or more of our food products in the European Union, in my opinion, we need to adapt our product to meet the market instead of expecting the market to adapt to the product. So just my thoughts, who knows what's going to happen in this world. These talks of tariffs, they're on again, they're off again. They're going to be 50%, they're going to be 100%, they're going to be 15%. I don't know. So just curious, what are your thoughts? If you live in Europe, do you own any American-made products? And now that I think about it, I hear a lot of people talking about, they are much less likely. A lot of Europeans are much less likely to purchase products made by a company from the United States than they were 6 months ago. So I think our business in Europe is going to go down because of that, regardless of tariffs, just because the consumers are honestly a little angry. But so if you live in Europe, what are your thoughts? Are you more or less likely to purchase a product from the United States now? What do you feel about tariffs? What do you think about food from the United States? Are you less likely to eat it because you have safety concerns? And cars from the U.S. Would you purchase a U.S. car if?
I'm less likely to eat American food if I can avoid it. But you know what's really crazy? It's the fact that American food has such inferior quality, but it's so much more expensive. I don't, for the life of me, understand that. But I'm definitely curious to know, what are your takes on American products as a European? Because he did kind of disprove what I said earlier when he brought up the iPhone and Netflix and things of that nature. I'll give him that for sure. But he also reinforced my point when speaking about the cars. And the food, that was something I didn't even consider. The clothes, I still think Europeans are wearing primarily European brands. I know H&M, for example, is a European brand, and that's one of the more popular clothing stores, even in the US, but especially in Europe. A lot of people are buying a lot of clothes there. So let me know what your take is on that. I'd love to hear what you have to say.